Hello, my name is Annika and welcome to the Sewing Nook. In this video I'm going to be showing you how I designed and made my own dress. The material I used for this was a queen bedsheet and it was 100% polyester, which I would have preferred cotton or something more natural, but the one benefit with this is that it does not wrinkle. Okay, so to get started on this, the first thing I'm going to do is draw what I roughly want the dress to look like. The main things I would like are for it to be sleeveless, to have a sheared waistline, and to have 3 tiers. I have a few other dresses I've made with tiers, and I just love how flowy and open it makes the dress feel. It does take more time, but it's definitely worth it in the end. Also, just a reminder to wash your fabric or your sheet before you use it so it does not shrink after you've made your dress. The pattern I'm going to be using to make this dress is a self-drafted bodice piece, and I only need the front and the back pieces, and then for the skirt I'm just going to do rectangles, so this should be pretty easy. If you were to make this dress, I would just find a dress pattern that has a simple loose fitting bodice and use that as your template. I've got my pattern laid out and I figured out how I want to try to do this, so I've decided I'm going to add an inch on this side to make the part right here a little bit more flowy, and then I'm also going to add an inch on this side and start from the top and go to that, and then I'm also going to extend it 9 inches. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's what the new piece looks like. I'm going to do that. This is the back piece. I'm going to do it for the front piece too, and then figure out the skirt in a little bit. I finished cutting out the front and back bodice pieces, and I've drawn up this chart to hopefully help explain how I'm going to be cutting out the skirt pieces and putting it together. So I have my front and back pieces, which I just cut out, and I'm going to take the bottom measurement, which is 27 inches on the front and 29 on the back, and add those together, which equals 56 inches. And then for the first tier, I'm going to multiply that by 1.5, which gives me 48 inches, and that is going to be the length. And then the width of the tier, I decided to do 13 inches. And then for the second tier, I'm going to multiply 84. I'm going to multiply that one by 1.5, which equals 126 inches, and that is going to be the length. And I'm going to have that tier 17 inches wide. As I start sewing it together, hopefully that will make it come together a little bit more. So now I'm going to cut out my 2 rectangles and then start sewing it together. I just finished cutting out my tier pieces. I was able to get the first tier in the width of the fabric, but for the second one I did have to cut 2 separate pieces. Once I sew them together, you won't really be able to tell. So now with the right sides together, I'm going to sew the first tier together along the width, and then I'm going to sew the second tier. I'm going to sew the 2 pieces together and then sew the sides together. I'm actually going to just serge the sides just to make it quicker. Now I'm going to serge the shoulders and the underarm seams. Okay, now I have my first tier done, my second tier done, and I've sewn the shoulder and side seams of my bodice piece. Now it's getting late, so I'm going to call it a night and pick this back up tomorrow morning. It's the next day now, and I have just tried on my bodice piece, and I marked where I want the shirring to be. So I'm going to draw a line so that it's even on both sides so I have a good reference, and then I'm going to start shirring the waist. Before I start shirring, I'm going to iron the side seams and the shoulder seams. Okay, now that I have my markings where I need, I'm going to start shirring at the top, and I'm not going to stop each time I come around. I'm just going to keep going till I get to the bottom. Also, just in case you're wondering, the thread color I used was kind of a tan color. I didn't want to use pure white because the fabric was a tan brown kind of color, and I actually really liked how this thread worked out. Now for the shirring, I'm going to change my tension from 4 to 3 and change my stitch length to the longest possible setting. Now different models can be different, so I would definitely look up your model and see what it specifically says to do for your settings. This is just what I have found to work best for my machine. One more thing to keep in mind is that whenever you are first starting shirring, make sure that you sew forward, sew back, and then sew forward again, just to make sure that it doesn't come undone. I just finished shirring it and I am loving how it's looking already. I am going to use the steam from my iron, and that'll make the elastic shrink a little bit more. Then I'm going to give it a press and figure out what I'm going to do next. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for the sleeves and the neck, but I decided to cut my own bias tape for the 2 sleeves, and then I am going to cut interfacing for the neck. And the easiest way for me to do this is just to use one of my bodice pieces and trace partly along the shoulder seam and the neck edge like this. And then to add however much I want, I'm going to add about 3.5 inches and just connect that. And I'm going to do the same thing for the back piece. Now that I have my 2 interfacing, I'm going to place them right sides together and serge along the shoulder seams, and then serge around the entire bottom and fold it up towards the wrong side and sew it down. Now that I've finished my interfacing, I'm going to attach it to my bodice piece. And I'm going to have my bodice right side out and this inside out and match them at the shoulder seams. And pin all of it together and then sew about 1/4 inch on the neckline. I'm going to clip the stitches along the entire neck edge, and this will help it whenever I turn it right side out, just to let it set evenly. Now I'm going to turn it right side out and give it a good press, and then do a top stitch along the entire neck edge. I'm going to give this a good press and then work on the bias tape for the sleeves. If you wanted to, you could hand stitch your interfacing down just to keep it in place, but if you use a hand stitch, then it won't show as much as a machine. I'm not going to do that right now. I probably will do it eventually, but not in this video. I ended up making another one of these dresses, and one of the things I did different was I added a keyhole in the back, and I just wanted to show you in case you wanted to do it. For mine, I just folded the back piece in half and marked 5/8 of an inch inward and 2 inches down, and then drew a rectangle, and then at the bottom I just made it a curve and then cut out that piece. The back of my bodice looks like this now, and I'm going to take some bias tape that I made from the same material and open one of the edges and place it on the wrong side of the bodice back, and then sew it together along that edge. I'm going to clip the curved edges and trim it, and then turn it towards the right side and give it a press and then sew it down. Now to finish off the neck edge, I'm going to take some more bias tape and put it around the entire thing the same way on the wrong side with one side open. And I'm also going to make sure that I have 9 inches extra on both ends of the keyhole. I'm going to sew that together and then trim the edges and clip the edges. and then turn it towards the right side and give it a press, and then pin it down. And I'm also going to make sure that at the end of the ties I fold it in about 1/4 of an inch just so that there's no raw seams. And then I'm going to sew all of that together. Now my tie is complete. Now to get back to the other dress, I'm going to start by making some bias tape from the same material, and I'm going to use this on both of the armholes to finish them off. I'm going to place my bias tape right sides on the right side of my bodice and pin around the entire armhole. Once you get to where the two bias tapes meet, here's how you're going to do it so that there's no raw edges. You are going to fold one of them towards the wrong side about 1/2 of an inch or so, making sure that you still have that side open to sew, and then place the other bias tape on top of that, like that. Then pin that in place, and once you sew it and turn it towards the right side, there won't be any raw edge. So now I'm going to sew around the entire thing, and I'm going to start a little bit after this, just so that this is the last thing I sew in case I need to make any adjustments. Now I'm going to trim the excess and clip around the entire thing, making sure not to clip the stitches. I'm going to turn it towards the wrong side and give it a press, and then sew down the entire thing. I repeated all those steps for the other one, and now I'm going to iron them and move on to the skirt. Okay, now for the skirt, I think I've decided I'm just going to add each tier rather than sewing them together and then sewing it onto the front. Let me know in the comments what y'all would have done or what you think would have been easier. I'm going to start by serging the entire bottom edge of the larger tier, which will be the very bottom one, and I'm going to serge it and then sew it towards the wrong side. I'm going to iron this hem and then sew gathering stitches on the top of this tier and on the top of the other tier. Now I'm going to take my bodice piece and have that right side out, and then take my first tier and I'm going to pull on the gathering stitches on the right side of the material and gather it till it fits around the bottom of my bodice. Now I'm going to place my tier right sides together onto the bodice piece, matching at the side seams, then pin around the entire thing and sew it together. Okay, I just tried it on and I'm loving how it's looking so much. I definitely need that second tier though, so I'm going to gather that one up and sew it onto here, onto the bottom of this tier, and then we only have a few steps left and we are done. Okay, I just finished sewing that together and I'm getting so excited about this dress, but I've decided I'm not going to try it on until I just finish it. So all I have left to do is seam rip the gathering stitches that are visible on both of the tiers, and then I'm going to serge the edge so that there's no raw edges. So I'm going to do that now and then try it on. Okay, I have finally finished this dress, and before I show you what it looks like, I wanted to ask two questions. One is kind of a question, but I think it would be such a good idea to add trim along the ruffle line. Unfortunately, I do not have enough of this trim, and I got it at Hobby Lobby, but it's discontinued, so they do not have it anymore. I'm sure that I can probably find something similar online, but I'm just gonna wait for now, and maybe someday I'll add it. But let me know what you guys think, whether it looks better with or without the trim. The other question is, would y'all like if I did where I showed how much it costs for the fabric and the pattern and the supplies and everything, just to get kind of an estimate idea of what one of the projects might cost if y'all wanted to make it? Let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate everyone who's already commented and given advice and just said such nice things. Thank you all, and here is the dress. I absolutely love how this dress turned out so much. I love the sheared waistline and the flowiness of the tiered skirts. I also really like how the other color turned out. Let me know in the comments which one you like the best. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already.